Okay, here's a more in-depth look at shape keys and how to go through the process of making the shape key for the override in VRChat. So first of all, when you have your model imported and you select the model, you go over here, click this, and you'll scroll down until you see shape keys. And you'll either have none or you'll actually have some, depending on the model that you have. So if you don't have any, you'll click this plus right here, make sure in object mode, and that shape, the basis shape key will be created automatically, and that's the shape key that lets Unity know that that's the default of this avatar. And any other shape keys will be used to trigger a certain event. So with visemes, which is the mouth movements of your character, those are a type of shape key that is used to let VRChat know that your character is talking. So when your character talks, it'll use those shape keys. And if you have blinking set up, let's say an animation or whatever, then the blinking will come up. And they can also have other expressions on your avatar. But what we're going to look at is putting a weapon in your hand or object or whatever to wield. So I will go ahead and show you how to do that. Okay, so now what you'll want to do, of course, is import your character and also import the object it's going to wield. So right here I have this character that's going to wield this gun. So first of all, we're going to position where we want the gun to go. And if you're new to Blender, basically how I'm moving around is holding shift, middle mouse, moves like that, let go shift, only middle mouse, and then we can rotate around like that. Press 1 on the number pad, brings you there, 3, 7, different numbers. 5 to go isometric view, 5 again to go back to perspective. Isometric view gives you like a perfect angle that you're at. This will be useful when rotating objects. So we move this over here, and looks like it's going to need to be rotated. We'll hit 1, and then we can see hit rotate right here, or hit R on the keyboard, and we rotate it around. Different angles give different rotation. That was nice English. You know what I mean. But this one already have the... Oops. I didn't have round selected. I'm supposed to have the gun selected. So this already have the measurements I need. Just negative 270. Just need to move that to place. So with a gun in your left hand, you'll want it pointing that way. Gun in your right hand, point to the right. Make sure it's up closer. All right, so we have that. Make sure we save, because things can go down. Character texture. Your gun should have a texture already. I'll go ahead and make one for this one for tutorial sake. But if it doesn't, then you can go ahead and just make one. It has to have a texture. Well, I mean, it doesn't have to, but it's going to make it really, really a lot more simple to do that. But, alright, so, we're going to select the gun with right click. We're going to hit Shift D, left click, and then Shift D, left click, so twice. So we made 2 additional guns. First one, let's go ahead and name it hand, because it's going to be on the hand. Name this one in guide. It's also going to be on the hand. And this one, we'll name it hip, because I'll have the gun on this hip. So let's go to guide. Let's get rid of the texture. We don't want to, or the material rather. We don't want a material on it. So we get rid of it with the minus button. And we're in object mode, by the way, down here. We are not in edit mode when we're doing this. Not yet, at least. Alright, and then hand, we'll leave it as is. Hip, we're going to... Well, first of all, let's move it. So I hit 1 and 5. 1 brought me to the front, 5 brought me to isometric. Hit R. Go ahead and get the angle we need. Looks like from over here while I was rotating it, got close to 90, so let's do 90. I'll zero that out. Right here, middle mouse to move around, and we got it on the hip. So now, with the hip one still selected, let's make a new material. I'll go ahead and name that hip. Make it easier. And you'll see why I'm doing this later on. And the gun texture on it, we're actually going to get rid of that. We don't need that right now. Control S to save. Saving is good. Make sure you do that often. I might forget because I'm talking. I'm not used to talking while I'm doing this stuff. Anyways, we're going to accidentally selected guys. So over here, left click to select them. We're going to make sure we're selecting hand. And let's shift and right click on the armature. And then we're going to hit Control P. And then this window will come up. And we want to go with empty groups. So now you can see over here that hand is gone. So we're going to hit this, scroll down, and hey, what do you know? Here it is. So everything still here. It's not gone, don't worry. So now we're going to go over here. And now we can see that it has all these vertex groups. So now since this is the left hand, we look for the one that says left hand. And what this is are the bones in the armature. So with that selected, I'm going to go to weight paint. So now with the handgun under the armature that we already parented is now touch the armature and everything. We get this and go to weight paint. Go to add. Make the radius as big as we can. Strength and weight all the way up. This unchecked. And then we're going to make it all red. And it should be all red if we have this unchecked. So if we have this checked, it's only going to limit what you can see, as it says limit selection to visible. And if I did it like that, on the other side you'd still see blue. So if you have that unchecked, it's going to get all of it. And all this makes it just a lot faster, and there's also subtract and all that stuff. But for this tutorial, we're not going to be using those. But you can see that it moved when we did that. So let's go back to object mode, and let's move that. And now the angle's a little bit different, so we can't really get an exact. Actually, what we can do, because it might make it simpler, with the this gun selected, Control A, we'll hit rotation and scale, click that, Control A again, and location. So now when we move it, well, I guess not. Never mind. Listen to me. Okay, let's rotate it there. Move it. The guide doesn't really matter right now, but I guess I'll just go ahead with the guide since it's there. We're using the guide for something else actually. So with that there, let's right click armature, go to X-ray. That way we can see the bones. And with the armature selected, we can get the pose mode. And now we right click here, and it looks like we got the right one, the left hand. So let's see if the gun will move. Yep. So the gun is attached to that bone. And since these are the parents, it'll move along with it as well. So, okay, we got that. Back to object, and we'll go ahead and get rid of that, unchecking X-ray. Okay, so you have to move it back into position, everything like that. And then you will want to do the same thing with the hips, or the hip gun. So the hip gun selected, do the same process, except this time we don't want the hand bone to control this, or it's going to move from the waist and then just fly everywhere. So let's find the hip bone. Mine's called hips. And we're going to do the same process. This one looks like we don't even have to move it. So that's really nice. And of course, if you have a sword on your back, you go to like, if you did Mixamo, it'd be probably spine 2, or if you made your own, it would be whatever your chest bone was, or whatever bone it's closest to. And it moves along with that. Okay, so after that, we will go ahead and test that. And hip bones is pretty much the god of all the bones, so everything's going to move with it. So yep, so move my leg, it's not going to move it. So like that. But if the character's walking around and stuff, the gun's going to stay with him. Alright, go ahead and save that. Let's get rid of that X-ray. Don't need that anymore. We can see the other guns. Alright, so now that we have that set up, make sure we have the character selected. And now we want the hand and the hip selected. We do not want the guide selected. Now what we want to do, and still make sure that you have the new texture on your hip. You kept this texture, and then the character's probably going to have its own. If the character does not have its own texture, it will need a separate texture. So now, Control J. Oops. Make sure that all of these are selected. Control J. And now, let's go in that character. Everything's connected, except for the guide, of course. But we'll get to that later. So now we have all that selected. We're going to go to over here. We're going to scroll down past the vertex groups and into the shape keys. So if you don't have any shape keys yet, you will click this and it'll make your basis. If you already have it, of course, you won't need the basis since you already have it. And then you'll make a new one, whether you have the basis or not, and then name it whatever you want, as long as it's not a duplicate of the other ones. Hit this so we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to name mine gun, since he's going to be using a gun. Now make sure, very, very, very important, we're on basis. That way we don't mess anything up. And again, basis is the default of the character, so the character in its default state And the gun state will be him obviously wielding the gun or the other object. So now, with basis selected, we're going to have the character selected and go to back to the materials. And now we'll hit A so we're not selecting anything. And let's start off with gun. So we'll select there. And now we want to shrink it. Make it as tiny as we can, and then go into here. Let's see here. Let's check this again so that way it's solid. So we can see if we're going through it or not. Here. All right. So now let's go ahead and hide that and hit tab, object mode. Okay, now we can see that he just has his gun right here. Let's go back to edit mode and not sure. Okay, it's not selected anymore. So select period. There it is. Now we want to select gun. So with the gun shape key selected and this selected, we're going to want to resize it, but for some reason the guide didn't want to follow through. So I guess we'll go ahead and add the guide to the armature and just delete it later. Well, I mean, we're going to delete it anyway. Let's go ahead and go through this process. And we'll do the same thing as we did with the handgun. Make sure we're not selecting anything. Right click. And then weight paint. Go. Let's make sure we're on left hand. And of course you could also have just duplicated it after you made that. That probably would have been easier. I just didn't expect this to move. Okay, so let's move this to where we would want the final product to be. That probably looks fine. Okay, so now we hit edit, it's going to go down. Okay. So actually, let's go ahead and, sorry about this. I didn't expect this. With the guide selected, we'll go ahead and make a new material and then call it guide. Bam. And then shift and then right click. Confusing myself. And then Control J. And now everything is one thing. There. So now he's holding on to the guide as well. Sorry about that. Kind of confusing. And of course, if your hand was still up here, you wouldn't have to have done that. But if it goes down into an A pose, then yeah. Okay. Anyways. Now with the gun shape key selected, we're going to go to the gun texture that your model has. Select that. And it's, again, from before, the really tiny one. Let's go ahead and make everything solid again. Resize it. Let's try going to the left. Yep, because if you go to the right, it's going to resize it backwards. So let's go to the left. Or whatever side it allows you to get it back. And then we're going to try to match it up with the guide, and then this is the reason we have the guide. the same size. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to look like you were taking your gun out. So you don't want it to be noticeable. So right there, that's fine. As long as it's lined up how you want it and everything. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and get rid of the guide. So with the guide material selected, go there, and then we're going to hit delete. We're going to delete the faces. Now go back to object mode with tab, get rid of the guide material because we don't need that material anymore. And so now we have the gun shape key selected. Basis, it gets rid of it. And now with the basis select, or actually no, gun shape key selected again, not basis. We're going to go back to edit mode, back to the materials, and we're going to go to hip. I'm going to select that, and it only selects this one because that material is assigned only to that. And then we are going to size that as small as we can. Hit period to go inside there and see. Okay. And again, since it's attached to the hip, we'll put it close to the hip. So now, hit A, and then it shouldn't be in there. So now let's go back over here. Looks like it worked. Go back to object mode and look at it. Make sure this is pinned down. Basis is what your character will look like without anything happening. And with the gun shape key activated, there it is in your hand. And now for the final cleanup process, go to materials. Let's go to tab. We'll select the hip. And we want this under the gun texture. We don't want it under hip anymore. That was just for the setup. So under gun texture, we'll hit assign. So now it should have the gun texture instead of the hip. So we hit select on the hip, nothing happens. So we're not using that anymore. So I'll get rid of hip. And that's it. Everything is all set up. Good to go.